Spain's new Digital Nomad Visa is the talk of the town, or at least the talk of all the Facebook groups for expats from outside the European Union. Yes, Spain is finally going to move to attract remote workers from other countries. It's going to be a big laptop class flamenco and sangria orgy out here soon. The final details of the Digital Nomad Visa haven't been worked out yet, but they should be by the end of this month, March 2023. So while all the young tech-savvy wanderlusters from around the world wait with bated breath to see what kind of bizarre requirements Pedro Sanchez and his band of incompetents come up with, let's take a deeper look at the implications of a digital nomad visa in Spain. I'm Daniel Welsh, and this is Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse about all things Spain. You're listening to episode 33 about Spain's new digital nomad visa. Coming soon to a city near you. First, I'd like to draw your attention to an article by one Germán Saucedo called "The Laptop Class Crosses the Border." I'm sure you can just Google that title. In it, Saucedo describes the thriving digital nomad scene in Mexico City, a city which, for many reasons, is attracting American and Canadian remote workers like never before. Arriving in Mexico on a 6-month tourist visa, these nomads of the laptop class can afford a lifestyle they've often been priced out of in New York, San Francisco, Vancouver, or Toronto. So, while enjoying the weather, food, and culture south of the border, they continue attending Zoom meetings in the north. They earn their large paychecks and pay no income tax. And so far, the Mexican government is doing nothing to stop them. Eventually, they run out their visas and hop back across the border to reset the 6 months. Or they move on to Lisbon, or Bali, or, who knows, maybe even Barcelona. It sounds pretty ideal, doesn't it? Especially if you're one of them. Trading in your extortionate rent payment in Manhattan for a much smaller monthly payment abroad, while still being able to enjoy the big city vibe, with all the bars, clubs, brunches, and artisanal matcha lattes you're used to back home. I enjoyed Saucedo's laptop class article because it talks both about the hilarity of people in Mexico being annoyed about those crossing their northern border, as well as the hypocrisy of progressive liberals moving to the quote-unquote developing world, just to benefit from the economic inequality they find there. Because, of course, that's exactly what they're doing. If you move to a country where most people are earning around $450 a month, your 6-figure salary is going to go a lot further. Hooray for inequality. Tim Ferriss called it geo-arbitrage back in the day. In his book, The 4-Hour Work Week, which inspired many, including myself, to start low-maintenance online businesses, he laid out the case for moving abroad, at least temporarily. Earn in a strong currency and spend in a weak one. What could possibly go wrong? I was already living abroad at that point, and I was earning in a strong currency and spending in a strong currency. The euro was doing very well at that point. But I must admit that for some time my plan B was to move to Costa Rica and earn $800 a month living on the beach and blogging. That never actually happened. I got legal in Spain, as I mentioned in my previous podcast about work permits. But I guess it could have happened. Anyway, your typical digital nomad supports a $15 an hour minimum wage, in theory, but by the end of the article, Saucedo comes to more or less the same conclusion that I have, The ultra-progressive laptop class doesn't actually care that the people serving them are earning $1.50 an hour. They're just good at pretending to care when it's necessary. They repeat the correct slogans and parrot the correct beliefs, but they're not above using the situation for their own benefit. Anyway, that's Mexico. What about Spain? My big question is this: will Spain benefit from the influx of digital nomads? Like I said, the final details of the visa haven't been worked out quite yet. But here's how it stands as of now. Digital nomads will be taxed at a flat 24% rate on their first 600,000 euros in yearly income, and will also, of course, pay all the relevant sales taxes when they're here. They'll have private health insurance, so they won't be a burden on the social security system. The minimum earnings they'll have to prove amount to about 30,000 euros a year. Not much in the US, but quite a bit more than the 24,000 euros the average Spaniard is earning. So the nomads get the fun in the sun. Spain gets the tax revenue from some potential big earners and spenders. It might just be a win-win. Except for real estate, of course. In my time here in Spain, nearly 20 years now, we've been experiencing what amounts to a permanent real estate crisis. First, there was the real estate bubble before 2008, in which the prices to buy homes were rising day by day. In those days, people felt like geniuses for spending €500,000 on a fifth-floor flat in a working-class neighborhood, because prices always go up. People took out huge mortgages on properties worth, in reality, much less. Then came the crash and the Great Recession, in which people in their 50s were moving back in with their parents and practically begging you to rent out the houses they could no longer afford to live in. Then there was the Airbnb scandal, in which people started blaming tourists for the rising rents in many places. Airbnb is now mostly illegal in Barcelona, but some people are still putting rooms and apartments up for rent and hoping to avoid the fines. After that was the whole COVID panic, which we surely all remember, in which real estate prices dropped because a lot of foreigners went home, a lot of people couldn't work and as a result couldn't pay their rent, and there was virtually no tourism. Now, in 2023, there's 10% inflation and rising interest rates, which are making adjustable rate mortgage payments no longer affordable for those who took them out near 0%. Add that to all-time high rent prices in several major cities, and you've got what's starting to look like a perfect shitstorm for both renters and those with mortgages. What will happen to the real estate market when you throw in a bunch of people used to paying $3,000 a month for a studio apartment? Probably nothing tragic, but I can almost hear the locals shrieking their outrage already. People with money have been moving to Spain, of course, for a very long time. Retirees from Germany and the UK have moved here by the hundreds of thousands over the last several decades. Presumably, the cost of living was one of the benefits. More recently, the non-lucrative visa lets anyone with a large bank balance live here temporarily, with the possibility of renewal. And let's not forget the golden visa that the government passed during the Great Recession. Essentially, a visa that lets rich people buy a Spanish residence permit by investing 500,000 euros in a house, $1 million in Spanish stocks, or a cool $2 million in Spanish government bonds. 500,000 euros is a lot to have in your bank account by Spanish standards, but I'm guessing that the number of people in the US who retire with that much money and more is not zero. It's probably a good number of people, and if you can just buy a house, move to Spain, and improve your lifestyle in some Andalusian village, you might just do it. In other words, plenty of relatively rich people are already here, and we're doing fine. Despite the inflation and all the real estate chaos I just mentioned, employment remains high, and the economy is officially doing pretty well. Also, let's not forget the fact that Spain has spent years trying to attract a higher level of tourist. People have been complaining for quite a while about Spain's reputation as a low-cost destination for Britons or Scandinavians on package tours who do little more than get drunk and fly home. Maybe the digital nomads will represent an improvement in the tourism economy, longer term, spending more money and doing a bit to enrich their communities. We can hope so, at least. So perhaps an influx of well-paid foreigners is a good thing. Either way, there's no stopping it for now. I wrote an article years ago about how you probably don't want to be a digital nomad, and one of the reasons I gave was the fact that you'll probably only be semi-legal wherever you are. Then Estonia and Portugal and several other countries created their digital nomad visas. Now Spain is going to have one. So maybe you can be more legal than you once would have been. And maybe Spain will become the new Silicon Valley. This certainly is a lot of maybes. Anyway, lots of people with money want to live in Spain, or at least own a home here. Recently, in fact, a foreigner of some kind, allegedly Asian, bought the most expensive flat in the history of Barcelona, a duplex on the top 2 floors of our new Mandarin Oriental residences. If you, like most people, are not part of the 0.01%, let's call it the 1% of the 1%, you might not know about the concept of the Mandarin Oriental residences, but apparently it's part wildly expensive apartments and part full-service hotel. There is a Mandarin Oriental hotel right down the street from the new residence, and the people living in the wildly expensive flats will also have access to the 5-star services of the hotel, the spa, and things like that that are not open to the general public. The residences, of course, have a 24-hour concierge service. They have a valet. They have maintenance and housekeeping included. It's just a playground for the ultra-wealthy, right here in my adopted home city. Also, I should mention that these very same Mandarin Oriental residences only exist because City Hall passed a moratorium on the opening of new hotels. So the developer who had already started the project had to build luxury residences instead. So, does a building full of ultra-wealthy families right on Passeig de Gracia benefit the local economy somehow? I guess it probably does, but I have my doubts about how much. Whoever just spent 40 million euros or possibly more on this new duplex is probably not going out to Bar Paco for patatas bravas after work. He's probably not buying broccoli at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. I really don't know how the 1% of the 1% spends their time and money. If you have any idea, just send me a message and let me know. I'm guessing it's different than how I do it. Anyway, another big question. Will there be an anti-digital nomad backlash? Because digital nomads won't be just renting real estate, of course. They'll be brunching at your favorite spot, co-working in your favorite cafe, and hitting up all the dating apps, hoping to sleep with you or someone you know. How long before we're all tired of them? Salcedo, in his article, mentions that some people in Mexico City have taken to confronting digital nomads on the streets. What about? I'm not sure. But I can imagine a conversation. Excuse me, is that an artisanal matcha in your hand? Go back to your country, stupid gringo. Something along those lines. Meanwhile, in Lisbon, anti-nomad graffiti has allegedly started appearing in more popular tourist areas. And that's fine. Barcelona's had its share of tourist go-home graffiti for as long as I've been here. They even have protests against mass tourism from time to time. The anti-system types will always find something to complain about. And one person with a can of spray paint hardly speaks for everyone in town. I'm not a class warrior. I think inequality of some sort is inevitable, and so is tourism. Where do the anti-tourism protesters go when they're on vacation? I assume they go to an Airbnb in someone else's town. So, the only question in my mind is how much of a nuisance the influx of digital nomads will be for locals like myself, and even more local locals like the native Catalan population. I think the digital nomad visa could be a good thing, but then again, I might be wrong. I hope you're having a great day out there wherever you are. That's about all I've got today. Maybe I'll see you soon here in Barcelona, clutching an artisanal matcha latte while some Catalan separatist yells at you to go back to your country. Or hey, maybe it won't be like that at all. Maybe you'll be welcomed with open arms, and we will all thank you for coming here and spending your big fat paycheck in our relatively cheap country. Talk to you next time, y'all. Until then, from the beautiful city of Barcelona, this is Daniel. Hasta la próxima. Thanks for listening to this podcast. For much more, you can head over to expatmadrid.com, where I write articles about all things Spain. You can donate to the cause at expatmadrid.com/donate. You could also subscribe to this podcast wherever it is you're listening, or over at the website, enter your email address for future updates. I hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world, and stay tuned for more Spain. Hasta la próxima and bye.